His hands shook as blood dripped onto the floor. The translucent woman stood before him, her eyes burning with suffering he could barely comprehend. "One prayer," she whispered. "One single Hail Mary saved me from eternal darkness." Padre Pio gasped as the vision pulled him deeper. He would understand the full truth soon. But first, he had to see what heaven wanted him to witness. The autumn rain hammered San Giovanni Rotondo on October 7, 1952. Padre Pio stood at his cell window watching the storm swallow the last daylight. His stigmata throbbed beneath the bandages. They always did when something significant approached. He had learned to read his wounds like a language. They spoke before heaven spoke. The evening rosary ended in the chapel below. Brothers filed out silently. Their footsteps echoed against stone. But Pio remained at the window. He couldn't shake the weight settling over him. Something was coming. Something that would force him to see beyond the veil again. The knock came at midnight. Pio hadn't slept. He sat at his desk with rosary beads moving through his fingers. When he heard the soft knock, he knew instantly. This wasn't one of his brother priests. The sound carried density that mortal knuckles couldn't produce. It resonated in his chest, in his bones. "Enter," he said. His voice stayed steady despite the sudden cold filling the room. The door opened slowly. No one entered. At least no one visible. Yet Pio felt the presence clearly. The air grew thick, almost liquid. His candle flickered though there was no wind. Then slowly, like ink through water, a form materialized in the room's center. It was a woman, or had been once. She appeared as translucent light, her features blurred as if seen through falling water. She wore a simple peasant dress, her hands clasped in desperate prayer. But her eyes arrested him. They were windows into suffering so profound he gripped his desk to keep from crying out. "Padre," she said. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a whisper that filled the room like thunder. "I have been sent to show you something, a truth about the smallest prayer, the Hail Mary." Pio made the sign of the cross. His stigmatized hand left a faint light trail in the air. "Who are you?" "I am a soul in purgatory," she replied. "My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I must show you before dawn pulls me back to my suffering. Come, Padre. Where we're going, you'll see why heaven treasures even the smallest act of love." Before Pio could respond, the room dissolved. He found himself on a dirt road through Italian countryside. Cypress trees lined the path against a bruised sky. The air smelled of rain and something wrong. Beside him, the woman's spirit flickered, more solid now. "This is where I died," she said. Her voice broke. "Where my reckoning began." The road was empty except for them. But Pio felt the past pressing down. He sensed violence soaked into the stones beneath his feet. "Tell me what happened," Pio said gently. The woman shuddered. Suddenly the empty road wasn't empty. A scene unfolded before him. A woman walking at dusk, shawl pulled tight. A man emerging from trees, face twisted with drink and rage. Scream cut short. Hands finding her throat. The struggle was brief and brutal. But what came after made Pio's stigmata blaze with pain. The woman's spirit rose from her broken body. She looked down at herself with pure horror. Then darkness came for her. Not metaphorical darkness but something with presence and intent. It moved like oil through water. Reached for her with tendrils of absolute negation. "I was in mortal sin when I died," the woman said. The words fell like stones into deep water. 3 years without confession. Pride made me think good works were enough. I fed the poor. I cared for the sick. I attended Mass every Sunday. But my heart stayed hard as stone. "But you're here," Pio said softly. "In purgatory, not the pit. Something saved you." What was it? Hope flickered in her devastated eyes. Small and fragile as a candle in a storm. "One prayer," she whispered. "One single Hail Mary, spoken by someone I'd wronged. Someone who had every reason to curse my memory instead." The scene shifted fast. A small shabby room lit by one oil lamp. Bare walls except a crucifix and faded Mary image. An old woman knelt beside a narrow bed. Her arthritic hands gripped rosary beads worn smooth by decades of prayer. Her face was a map of suffering. Every line a road of sorrow traveled and survived. Pio recognized that look. Someone deeply, irreparably wronged. "My mother-in-law," the spirit said, shame thick in her voice. "I made her life misery for 20 years. Drove her from her home in old age. Spoke to her with cruelty that would shame demons. I was young and beautiful. I used that power like a weapon." Her voice broke completely. "When I died, she had every right to rejoice. To pray for my damnation. She had every justification for hatred. Instead, she did something unexpected. Something that changed everything. The old woman's lips began moving. Pio couldn't hear the words but didn't need to. He knew them by heart. The Hail Mary, the simplest prayer one children learned before they could tie their shoes. Just 53 words. Less than a minute to speak. But as the old woman prayed with absolute sincerity, Pio saw something that froze his breath. The prayer became visible. It rose from her lips as light, a thread of pure luminescence gleaming like gold. The thread spun upward through the ceiling, through the roof, through storm clouds, ascending with arrow precision. Pio's vision followed it. His spirit detached from his body. He soared after that golden thread as it climbed higher. He passed through reality layers he had no names for, dimensions beyond human language. Then he saw where the prayer went. Prayers for healing and forgiveness. Prayers for the dead and dying. Prayers spoken in cathedrals and mud huts. In hospitals and battlefields. He saw angels whose forms hurt to look at directly. Beings of concentrated purpose. They seemed like living equations. They sorted and weighed each prayer, carried them to appointed destinations with precision that made planets look clumsy. But the single Hail Mary arrested his attention. That one prayer from one old woman had pierced all creation layers. It passed through angelic hierarchies, ascended ever upward, until it arrived before a throne of light so brilliant Pio had to shield his eyes. From that throne came a response, not in words but in action. Power so pure and absolute it made earthly authority look like children playing. The response was mercy incarnate, love given form, God's will made manifest. Pio was pulled back to the woman's death moment. But now he saw through different eyes, through revelation's lens. The darkness still reached for her soul. By every justice law, she should have been claimed, should have fallen into the pit with no return. But between her spirit and eternal night, something else arrived. A presence both gentle and terrible, wearing the form of a woman crowned with stars. Mary, the Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, she who said yes to the angel, she who stood at the cross, she who knew suffering and transformed it to perfect love. She came for one prayer from one old woman who had every reason to hate. Pio watched weeping as Mary reached down, lifted the woman's spirit, cradled it like a mother cradles a wounded child. Infinite tenderness, infinite strength. The love in that gesture was so intense Pio's stigmata split open fresh. Blood ran down his wrists in hot streams, soaked through his bandages. He understood then. One prayer had moved heaven itself. One Hail Mary without eloquence had bent a soul's trajectory from damnation toward hope. From darkness toward light. Mary spoke to the darkness. It retreated, not far. The woman's sin still demanded justice, still required purification, but far enough. She didn't place the woman in paradise. Not ready, not cleansed, not fit for the beatific vision, but neither did she allow her to fall into the pit of eternal separation. Instead, the middle place, purgatory, that realm of suffering containing hope, where souls burn but aren't consumed, where pain has purpose, where agony isn't endless but redemptive. You will suffer, Mary said, her voice like music and thunder. You'll know the weight of what you did, feel the full measure of pain you caused. But this suffering has an end, this fire has a purpose. You'll be refined, not destroyed. When every stain is burned away, you'll come home to me. You'll know joy beyond measure. The woman wept, not despair, gratitude mixed with terror, relief with anguish, hope from loss's ashes. Do you see now? She asked Pio. Do you understand what you must tell them? Even the smallest prayer can move God's hand. The living hold unimaginable power. The scene shifted final time. Purgatory itself. That vast gray space where souls refined in fire. He saw the woman trapped in perpetual suffering. A replica of her old life but twisted. Reflecting back all cruelty and pride she'd perpetrated. She relived her worst moments again and again. Saw herself through hurt eyes, experienced her sin's full weight without self-deception. Every cruel word spoken back to her, every refused kindness offered then withdrawn, pride transformed to humiliation, power to helplessness. She saw her mother-in-law weeping in the cold, driven from home, defeat in tired eyes. She knew with absolute certainty, she'd done this. The suffering was her creation, her choice, her sin. Each suffering cycle burned away soul sickness. Each truth confrontation stripped defenses. Purification at terrible cost. How long? Pio asked through tears. Time has no meaning here, she replied. A day might be a year. I don't know how long I've suffered. I'll suffer until I'm clean. Until every stain is burned away. And the prayer? Pio asked. The Hail Mary, does it help? Her form brightened dramatically, almost solid. It's the only thing that helps, she said with intense voice. Each time someone prays for me, I'm given strength to endure. Prayers of the living are like water to the thirsty, bread to the starving. They don't remove suffering but make it bearable, make it redemptive, give hope. She wept light tears that dissolved before reaching ground. That one prayer purchased my rescue from the pit, the difference between eternal darkness and purifying fire. Prayers since sustain me, give me hope suffering will end, that I'll be free, that pain has meaning leading home to God. The vision faded, Pio pulled back toward his body. Before she vanished, she reached toward his hand, fingers passed through like smoke. The sensation bypassed flesh, went straight to soul. Tell them, she said, voice growing distant, tell them living's prayers carry unimaginable power. One Hail Mary with faith fragment moves God. We in purgatory rely on prayers like drowning men rely on air. Tell them, make them understand, don't let them waste mortal life. One Hail Mary changes everything, difference between darkness and light, despair and hope, damnation and paradise. Then she was gone. Pio gasped alone in his cell, stigmata bleeding freely, heart hammering like caged bird. Candle burned to stub, rain stopped. Through his window, first grey dawn touched the hills. Pio rose on unsteady legs, knelt before the crucifix, hands shook bringing them together. Blood dripped onto floor in steady rhythm. He prayed, not with elaborate theology but simple desperate words. A child calling his mother, a soul crying for help. Hail Mary, full of grace, he began, voice rough with tears. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. As he spoke, he saw it again. Prayer rising like light, golden thread ascending through darkness, carrying all hope and fear and love of his battered heart. He repeated the prayer, again and again, each repetition a small faith act, each word defiance of darkness seeking souls. He prayed for the woman who visited, for all purgatory souls, for the living not understanding their power. Prayer became his heartbeat, his breath, his entire existence. He was no longer famous mystic with bleeding wounds, simply a soul crying to God. A child calling mother, a believer speaking words millions spoke before, millions would speak after, simple enough for a child, powerful enough to move heaven's foundations. As he prayed, understanding flooded him. Prayers were literally heaven's currency, the mechanism by which mercy flowed from God's throne to suffering souls. Every Hail Mary was a hand extended across the abyss, a lifeline to the drowning, a bridge across the chasm separating living from dead. Morning came, brothers stirred. Bell rang for lauds. They found Pio still kneeling, still praying, face wet with tears not entirely his own. Stigmata had bled through bandages, soaked his habit, stains that would never wash out, but his eyes were bright. Light from his soul, from revelation burned in like permanent brand. He'd seen grace's hidden machinery, witnessed purgatory's terrible beauty, understood why the church begged its children to pray without ceasing for the dead. Purgatory souls couldn't help themselves. They'd passed beyond where their own actions could purchase freedom. They relied entirely on God's mercy and living's prayers. Without prayers, suffering stretched endlessly, became almost unbearable, drove to despair's edge. But with prayers, even one, even simplest Hail Mary, they were given strength, hope, assurance they weren't forgotten or abandoned. Later in the confessional, Pio looked at each penitent with new eyes. These ordinary souls had no idea of power they carried. With prayers they could storm heaven, move the immovable, rescue souls from unimaginable torment, all requiring faith enough to speak, to believe simple words mattered, that God listened, that love was stronger than death. For your penance, he told a despairing old man, pray one rosary for purgatory souls, 53 Hail Marys, each one a lifeline to a drowning soul, each one mercy extended, each one light in darkness. The man nodded, confused by intensity but willing to obey. As he left, Pio closed his eyes, saw again that golden thread ascending, reaching the light throne, mercy flowing in response like water from spring, like light from sun, like love from God's heart. It happened all around him, all the time, every moment. Prayers rising like endless light cascade, grace descending like rain on parched earth. Living and dead bound in communion transcending time and space and death. That night exhausted, Pio knelt before the crucifix. As he brought hands together, he felt a presence. Gentle. Barely there. Unmistakable. Not the woman. Something else. Many someones. A multitude too vast to count. Chorus of voices as one. Thank you, came the whisper. Then another. Another. Until the room filled with countless souls expressing gratitude. Countless spirits acknowledging prayers offered for them. Voices rose and fell like waves, like breathing a vast entity made of all purgatory's suffering souls. all crying the same message. We are here, waiting, suffering but not without hope. We need your prayers, your love, don't forget us. Help us. Padre Pio wept. He understood finally and completely. The simplest prayer. The prayer his mother taught his child. Powerful enough to move heaven. Haunt hell's halls. Comfort dying. Rescue dead. Transform suffering into glory. Hail Mary, full of grace, he whispered into darkness. Voice joining centuries-long chorus that would continue until time's end. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Somewhere in gray places between life and death, a soul felt mercy's touch. Knew it wasn't alone, not forgotten. Love hadn't abandoned it. The prayer reached across impossible distance, bridged unbridgeable chasm, connected earth to heaven, time to eternity, death to life. The prayer continued as always had and always would, rising like light from faithful lips, ascending like incense toward God's throne, carrying all humanity's hope and fear and love, one prayer at a time, one Hail Mary at a time, one soul at a time, until all were home.